Hey, good evening and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the gun store here in beautiful Las Vegas. For those of you who missed us on Tuesday, the last time I'm going to say this on the air is we got preempted by Dodger baseball on Tuesdays. So we're over here on Thursdays with a whole bunch of new listeners and a whole bunch of phone calls. Where did your show go? We are here on KSHP 1400 AM radio on Thursdays from 5 to 6. We're broadcast simultaneously almost on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. If you go to the YouTube channel, you can actually see us as well as hear us, same show. The YouTube version starts a few minutes after the radio, so you can't really listen to radio and watch the YouTube at the same time because the sound is off because of the different systems. However, we're here, and if you miss anything, you were driving in your car and didn't hear something or whatever, you can, when you get home, just flip on YouTube. The shows stay on YouTube forever and ever, and you can look at 4 years of old ones if you want. See what I said 3 years ago that turned out to be absolutely wrong. It's all there for the record. My guest tonight is Las Vegas attorney and firearms instructor Bill Gamage. Bill, a little bit of your background, if you would, one more time. You're only here once a month or so.
Yeah, only once a month or so. Yeah, I'm a criminal defense attorney mostly. I also handle some civil work, and I also certainly defend people that have issues related to the lawful use of firearms, sometimes the unlawful use of firearms as well. Prior to that, I was in law enforcement for about 11 or 12 years, and I ran a firearms program, and you and I taught at police academies for a number of years.
Yes, we did. That makes Bill really one of my very favorite attorneys to have on here because he's got background in law enforcement, which a lot of attorneys have, but he's also got background as a firearms instructor, and he actually understands when you try to explain to him, this is what I did, and I don't remember doing that. He understands that. Taught it for years, and if you are in serious trouble with a shooting, Bill is right up at the top of my list of attorneys who I recommend. You can find his contact information on our website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin. Bill Gamage of Gamage and Gamage.
Yes.
Gamage and Gamage. The interesting, you partnered with somebody else named Gamage.
I am.
Interesting. Anyway, if you have a question or comment, you can send an email to bob@firedupmail.com, and that's under one of these signs here. There we go. That one. We're going to get electronic one of these one day when we get better at this. Otherwise, we have a little cardboard one. If you have a question for Bill or want his advice on a case or something you're involved in, you can send the email direct to me at bob@firedupmail, and I'll forward it to him. Or you can find him again on our website at Gamage and Gamage Attorneys. And let's see, we do answer, if you inquire like that on the website, we do answer all incoming emails. If we get an email that involves the same question over and over from several people, we'll use it on the air and explain it on the air. Generally, we do answer all questions that come into our website. So send it in. If you don't understand something, we'll be happy to talk to you about it. The show is about guns, related political issues, big thing right now, and self-defense issues as well. As we all know, there's several hundred uses of firearms every week in the United States for self-defense purposes. Usually not covered by the mainstream media because usually it's not newsworthy. If someone breaks in your house and you point your gun and the guy runs away, if you're smart, you go back to bed. You call the police, you're going to be up for the next 4 hours. Those stories, though, don't make the media because they're so commonplace. We've got to have 10 of them in Las Vegas every week, I would think, at this point, looking at the numbers. So we always start with a few cases that are good use of firearms. Some are good, some are questionable. We got one coming up that's interesting. But they're all food for thought for gun owners. The reason I do that is I want you to look at what happened, and even if it's a good shoot, we may have some suggestions that it would be a little better if you'd have done this instead. So you can put yourself in the position of these people. It's not to judge whether they were smart or stupid, but to use it as a teaching tool to what could have been done good or what was done wrong. Usually that, because of that reason, I leave names out and so forth, because I want the incident, not the people. I'm not terribly concerned that this guy's name is Fred. And this is from KTRK TV. It's ABC Channel 13 in Fort Bend County, Colorado. A good shoot. A homeowner shot and killed a man trying to rob him on Wednesday night. The Fort Bend County Sheriff told Eyewitness News the would-be robber demanded money from the homeowner as he stopped in his driveway in the 18,300 block of Mossy Creek. He stopped in the driveway, getting out of his car. Guy walks up to him and points a gun, tells him he's robbing him, apparently. The homeowner grabbed a gun from his vehicle and shot the would-be robber twice. The incident is being investigated by the sheriff's office there as an attempted robbery. 2 weapons were recovered at the scene. One belonged to the homeowner. The other apparently was wielded by the robber, who was pronounced dead at the scene. The deceased robber was a male in his 20s. Neighbors report they saw a black truck with 2 people inside speed off right after the incident. It seems obvious he had a couple of accomplices there. That when he got shot, they left him and took off, which is fairly common. The sheriff, talking to the press, issued a stern message for criminals about this. He said, if you're coming into his jurisdiction, don't come to Fort Bend County and start waving guns around because you'll leave in a bag, he said. This is a perfect shooting, and this is an example of how you can mess it up later.
Oh, yeah.
A photograph was taken just moments after the shooting, shows the homeowner with his gun in hand standing steps away from the robber's lifeless body in his front yard. Back to the shooting. Action beats reaction every time. Generally, if the bad guy isn't expecting you to pull a gun and you can smoothly pull your gun and fire, you will fire before he has an opportunity to fire, because his brain is still, it takes him a couple hundred milliseconds to realize you're drawing a gun, and by that time he's already hit. The flip side of that is sometimes people react to being shot by pulling the trigger of their own gun, and it gets you shot. If it works, it's great. With a gun pointed at you, that's his call. You can't tell the distance and so forth here and how much he practiced, but obviously he had practice, because otherwise that would have been a losing battle. The 2 guys ran away instead of aiding their friend. There's no honor among thieves. That's pretty standard. Bill, this is why I put this case in for you. The photo of the body with the guy after the shooting, which was posted on local media, apparently. My thoughts are, if you really want a picture of yourself with the body holding the gun, you probably want to keep that to yourself, because this has raised a huge ruckus. It's like a trophy hunter does when he is next to a deer with the arrow sticking out of his ear,
It's certainly not something, Bob, I would want to have to defend. And I don't know why somebody would want to do that. I don't know. It certainly bespeaks of a certain attitude that the person has, which certainly a jury, I don't think, would find very sympathetic. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this as a self-defense shooting. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Other than the little risk of getting shot doing what he did. Mm-hmm. It's great. Perfect shooting.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody does that, and now they have this posed picture, mm-hmm. and I haven't seen the picture. I'm presuming he's grinning. I don't know, but.
Yeah.
Should there be civil litigation over this?
Yeah. It's a great.
How does he explain that to the jury?
If it goes to a jury, but yes, certainly plaintiffs lose cases when they are not sympathetic, or when they seem to have a snide or flippant attitude, or the jury just doesn't like them as human beings. They won't give them the kind of redress that that person maybe deserves. So it's people decide, you know what, I don't like that person, so I'm not going to help that person. And so a lot of cases are decided on how much of a positive attitude a person has, and something like this could substantially harm your defense in a civil case. I don't think it would affect in any way, shape, or form the criminal.
The criminal case, no, I think I agree. I think the criminal case is fine.
Yeah.
It's a criminal case by a jerk,
Mhm.
but you're not going to get sent to prison for being a jerk.
No.
That actually, we might look at that later on with the assembly, but I'm looking at this going, so
It's indefensible.
do you put your defendant on the stand?
No.
To testify? It is undefense.
Unfortunately, in a civil case, you don't get to choose not to. So if they call you as a witness,
So
you have
if
to go.
there is a case, he has to go.
In a civil case, and
Yeah.
the plaintiff's
Wow.
lawyer calls him as a witness, he has to testify.
If you get this case, I don't think you want to.
No, I would not take that case.
It would be fun.
Well,
It'll make headlines around the world. You'll be like, famous lawyer. Okay, questions or comments to bob@firedupmail.com. Please, if you get a moment, friend us on Facebook, a Facebook page for Fired Up with Bob Irwin. You can friend us there and see the shows there. We offer here at the gun store concealed carry permit classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, 3 classes a week. You can find them on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, and actually sign up online. We hold about 45 people in each class, so there's usually lots of room. And please come down and learn, like, not to do that after the fact. If you shoot somebody, don't talk. Don't put pictures on your Facebook page, whatever. Let your attorney do the talking for you. This is from AL.com, Alabama.com, in Pike County, Alabama. On the 12th, investigators say 3 young men broke into a home to rob it early Thursday. Instead, one of them is now dead and 2 are behind bars. A lieutenant with the Pike County Sheriff's Office said they were called to a home on County Road 3016. Sounds picturesque, doesn't it?
It does.
About 2:30 a.m. He said the 36-year resident told them he answered a knock at the door and 3 men forced their way inside. The victim said one of them pulled a gun on him and told him to give it up. The intended victim grabbed the gun, wrestled it away from the robber. He reported then shot at the intruders as they advanced on him. The suspects fled on foot. After the shot was fired, responding deputies found one of the robbers lying in a pool of blood about 200 yards away. That 21-year-old suspect had gunshot wounds and was pronounced dead at the scene. The other 2 suspects were captured shortly afterwards. They are both currently charged with first-degree robbery. The surviving robbers may be charged with murder, as the deceased robber was killed during the commission of a felony they were part of and so forth. We'll explain that in a minute. All 3 were involved in the crime and somebody died. The resident has not been charged, although there is an investigation still ongoing. One of the suspects is being held on $250,000 bail. The other is on no bail because he was already out on bail at the time of the arrest for this crime.
Oh.
Okay. This is Steven Seagal's Aikido in real life. Again, action beats reaction. And if the bad guy was dumb enough to let him be close enough to deflect and move the gun and actually take the gun and shoot him, good for the bad guy. It cost him his life. Something to think about from the other side, and you're holding a gun on a suspect who's in your house, that you're not close enough that he can grab the gun from you. There's nothing more embarrassing than being shot with a gun that you gave to the bad guy. I'm sure this guy'd be embarrassed because it's the other way around, but he'd be dead. The victim's aggressive move saved his life, no doubt. Bringing your own gun is a lot easier than depending on letting the bad guy get close enough to take his. So I'd suggest that you have your own gun in a gunfight.
And don't answer a knock at the door.
Don't open the door at 2:30 in the morning. He apparently had a gun handy, which is good.
Yes.
But usually you want to, like, who's there? You need a tow truck. I'll call one for you.
Call the police.
Everybody has cell phones. The story always is, my car broke down or somebody's hurt and my cell phone's dead, and I just happen to be in front of your house at 2:30 in the morning and want you to open the door. They're lying. How often does that happen to you where there's somebody at your door at 2:30 in the morning, and then they say, my cell phone's dead, and you say, what's the number? I'll call 911 for you. And they say,
that's okay.
Never mind. That's when you really want to call 911 because they really needed help. You know, but try not to let the bad guy get that close to you. That's the issue here that I see. Bring your own gun to the gunfight.
Yeah.
We do teach here some basic and advanced pistol classes also here at the gun store, which would cover some of this tactical stuff of how to move and so forth.
Absolutely.
And you can sign up for those on our website also. Unlike our CCW classes, those are not free, but they are really educational if you have a gun. Post Courier in North Charleston, North Carolina. That's pretty north Charleston, North Carolina. The police fire in Spokane said the incident began with a verbal altercation in Willie's Bar on Dorchester Road about 2 a.m. One of the men involved in the argument eventually pulled a gun on his opponent. The opponent, who is technically now the victim of an assault, left the bar, went out to his vehicle in the parking lot to avoid additional confrontation with the guy. After he entered his vehicle, the aggressor, who still has the gun, and another person approached the victim's car. The aggressor again showed the guy his weapon, and I guess showed it as in his belt and began to pull it out. According to police, the intended victim, fearing for his life, he said, pulled out his own handgun and fired several rounds at the armed aggressor, hitting him at least once. Police arrived at the scene and the wounded man was transported to the hospital. Police did not arrest the shooter given the multiple witnesses and statements and video surveillance about the incident because they basically knew what happened. This is the camera in the bar and the parking lot showing the guy leaving, the two guys coming out after him. So they clearly have a video of who the aggressor is in this confrontation. It's a great shoot. When the argument gets potentially violent, the guy brandished a gun in some manner. The victim withdrew. The aggressor followed him. So we're clear on who caused the confrontation. This is a good shoot. The security cameras are saving this guy's behind, basically, because otherwise
it could be
my word against yours.
It could be a he said, she said. And what happens if the aggressor had more witnesses on his side in the bar? And then I guess the side note,
and there's two of them outside and one of him. So
and I guess the side note is that you shouldn't be carrying a gun when you're drinking. So and being stupid.
Good idea. Well, the bad guy this guy was smart with his gun. This perked my interest because I did a case that's very similar to this, that the security, it was a he said, she said with 4 guys involved, 2 on each side, knife drawn, gunfire made. And actually, Bill, you were involved in the case I'm thinking of it, that strip club, where if we had not had for the court case the video surveillance showing who came after who, it would have been a much, much tougher case.
Absolutely.
Because the particular I'm talking about is Bill's clients were in the bar. When they left the bar, they had words apparently with these guys, and it's a long involved story, but they were followed out into the parking lot. The bad guys eventually tried to run over Bill's clients. They fired in self-defense, and then they left the scene, leaving the only explanation as to what happened with the bad guys. So don't do that. Stay there. Fortunately, they went home and called their attorney before they made a statement. Good. That's a good part. It would have been easier if they did it in the parking lot at the time.
Yes,
and
it would have been much easier.
It was a long involved court case. Bill was working with Dominic Gentile's office at that time. It was a great case. I mean, because I love defending clients who really are innocent.
Yes,
that really helps. And they were innocent in every stretch of the imagination here. And Bill was involved in that. That's one of the cases we worked together actually on that. And anyway, don't leave the scene. Even if you got Bill coming over the house, have Bill meet you there instead.
Yeah, we will absolutely meet you. In that particular case, I actually produced the clients to the homicide detectives along with a gun. And they asked me, where'd the gun come from? I said, hey, do your magic on it, test it. You guys will figure it out.
Yeah. That's what you have lawyers for, you know?
Yeah, they weren't happy. We actually, I produced them. Both of them had in hand written affidavits stating that they were asserting their Fifth Amendment rights to remain silent, and handed those over to the detectives and to have a lawyer present during all questioning.
That makes it so much easier because you can get yourself in a world of trouble saying something that seems to you to be a good idea to say that turns out to be just not. WNCT TV9 in Oriental, South Carolina. The name of the town is Oriental. Deputies in Palico County say a shooting Thursday happened after a man entered Mac's Mini Mart on Broad Street at 1:22 p.m. in an apparent rage and attempted to assault two store employees. Communications say the 911 call from one of the employees said that someone was trying to kill him and the shooting had taken place. Moments later, they got another call. The suspect had entered the store and attacked the clerk, had been shot, and then fled the scene on foot. These are two separate calls from inside. Witnesses then told the deputies the suspect came into the store after banging on the front door several times. He entered the store in an apparent rage and attempted to assault two store employees. One of those employees retrieved a handgun from behind the counter and fired one shot, hitting one intruder. After being shot, after being shot, the enraged man fled the store, ran to a nearby house. He went in there too. He didn't know them either. They called 911. Deputies located him at that home and with what appeared to be two gunshot wounds, one on the arm and one on the upper chest. He was taken by EMS to a local hospital. He's currently listed in serious condition. According to the online records, the suspect had just been released from prison on May 6th. This took place on May 13, 7 days, and was out on parole from the previous case. He had convictions for drug possession, evading arrest, assault with deadly weapon, drunken disorderly conduct, as well as a hit and run. No charges have been filed. The incident remains under investigation.
But charges will be filed.
I would expect so.
I would expect charges will be filed against the clerk. You know, the difference between when a law enforcement officer and when a civilian can use deadly force is substantial.
Right.
The force a citizen uses must be reasonably tailored to the level of the threat. So the big if in this case is, what was the assault? If it was words, if it was harsh language, if it was something like that, or flailing of arms, or even just punches, attempted punches, you probably have a criminal problem in this case if you are the clerk that pulled the trigger.
Yeah, and we don't have that. There's no discussion of he punched the clerk, knocked him to the ground, whatever. And he's very aggressive and yelling. Yeah. That's clear by some of the witnesses.
But also, I mean, there has to be some, probably some weapon present. The threat must be imminent of deadly force, of deadly harm, of substantial bodily harm in this state anyway, or death. And if you don't have that, you can't resort to deadly force. And it may be a different issue for police depending on the circumstances, right. But for a citizen, it's not. That's generally not the case. Also, all this stuff about he was on parole, he was on this, he was that, he was this kind of person, it's irrelevant. It's not coming into the case at all, because right. For an affirmative defense of self-defense, you only can go with the subjective knowledge of the shooter. What did they know about this person regarding their potential for violence or potential for a threat? Right. So if the person didn't know any of these things, so they'd never seen them before in their life, they can only go with what is in the confines of the actual environment where the shooting occurred.
The other complications I saw in this immediately, I mean, this certainly appears to be a good shooting given the level of violence. But again, as Bill pointed out, it seems to all be threats.
Yeah.
The guy was certainly scary. I mean, this may have been, sure. Apparently it's not a robbery attempt. The guy didn't try to get any money. Yeah. He's just mad at the world for some reason. This would go as a suicide by clerk.
Or maybe he's just a crazy person. He's off his meds or some other problem. You know, in the end, you could actually turn this person probably into a victim, depending on what his mental health history is. You know, depending on what his background is. I mean, but in the end, also what has to be understood by the listeners is that no district attorney ever got votes by just deciding not to prosecute in a case like this. Self-defense is an affirmative defense,
Right.
and it must be demonstrated to a jury, and the jury has the power. And the prosecutor is like, well, okay, I don't know if this is a good shooter or not. Tell you what, let's let a jury decide.
Right.
And he's absolutely correct in charging it. However, he reasonably needs to charge it that he thinks he can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And then it shifts the burden of proof and persuasion to the person who pulled the trigger to demonstrate that this affirmative defense of self-defense is appropriate, meaning I deserve to not be convicted because I acted within the affirmative defense of self-defense.
And one of the things that perked my attention in going the same direction that Bill is with this case is the initials reported it as 2 bullet wounds, but they're sure only 1 shot was fired. And because one went through his arm and then into his chest.
Mhm.
Because when people have guns pointed at them, they do just like they do when fists are flying, they go like that.
Yeah.
Which would indicate, depending where the bullet is in his arm,
Yeah.
that hit his chest, but his hands were in front of his body in a defensive posture. You'd have to look at the bullet track actually through the arm and so forth. But when you see 1 shot and 2 bullet holes, and 1 is through the arm, that's usually what happened. So it needs to be looked at by a jury.
Which is
Again,
extremely expensive and extremely emotionally expensive.
Yeah.
And if these people could have backed themselves out with the gun and reported it,
that would have been, yeah. Well, always, if you can escape without getting involved in shooting people, it's just so much better, because these cases go on forever, and it's most people look at this guy who shot the guy too, but we're looking at it now from a legal perspective, and the guy probably deserved to be shot. But the question is, did he need to be shot? That's it. This is, oh yes, Odessa Online. This is in Odessa, Texas, I believe. I didn't put the state. No, well, I didn't let the state off this one. It may not be Odessa, Texas. It's Odessa somewhere. Police are investigating at 4:30 a.m. an incident in the 4600 block of Valley Brook Lane East in East Odessa. A 51-year-old homeowner was awakened when his wife heard noises coming from the front door. The husband secured a firearm and went to investigate. When near the door, he also heard banging at the door and saw the door frame actually beginning to crack because somebody was kicking it or shouldering it. When the door gave way, an unknown male intruder charged in and rushed the husband. He had a gun with him. He fired several shots. City officers responded to a 911 burglary in progress with shots fired. When they arrived, they found the intruder had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. The intruder, identified as a local 25-year-old, was taken to a medical center where he was pronounced dead by medical personnel. Autopsy's been ordered. You'll see why in a minute. The Odessa Police Department spokesman said other details of the incident are not being released, but no arrests have been made. Local media there, WIS TV 10, reached out to the intruder's former girlfriend. She told them it was a misunderstanding, that she said he was under the influence and walked into the wrong house. He had no intention of stealing anything. He was just out of it and went to the wrong house. That's it. No stealing, no burglary. He was a good dad. Now my son doesn't have a father to come home to. This is his ex-girlfriend. When the investigation is complete, it'll be forwarded to the Ector County District Attorney's Office. Couple things here. This is why you need to have a gun in your house. This guy came to the door. I would discount everything the ex-girlfriend said. She wasn't there. She doesn't know what was going on.
and even if it's true, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, he was a good dad. Okay, why is he at 4:30 a.m. crashing through this person's door? If he's in the wrong house, he's in the wrong house. You know, you ring the doorbell, you yell, "Hey, it's me," something. When someone is charging across your living room that just kicked your door in, you need to have a gun and fire. we're way beyond the negotiating, you know, stop where you are.
You can presume when you're in your home, at least in a Nevada case, when somebody breaks your door down and rushes you, a threat to yourself or the other occupants of your house, and you can defend yourself.
Did the homeowner have time to see if he was armed? No.
Doesn't really matter.
You know, here he comes. Any other action you might try, verbal commands, you know, that are useless here. It's happening. The autopsy may find a reason for the guy doing this, that he was spaced out on drugs or some type of new mixture of drugs. His ex-girlfriend can probably add something to his personality. She's already defending him, and she wasn't there either. So you have to go with a homeowner in this case and look at this and go, what else could he have done?
Well, yeah,
nothing. His wife's upstairs. They're on the phone. The cops are on the way. And here comes the bad guy. You need to have a gun in your house. This is why. Right here. Valid. We have a ladies only shooting and personal safety class twice a month, taught by noted instructor Maggie Mordaunt. Next one is Thursday, May 26th. And here at the gun store, you can sign up online for that great class. If you are a woman and not comfortable with your gun, take the class. You will love it. 537. Okay. KHOU TV Houston, Texas reported on the 11th. This is another goofy thing. Gunfire rang out in an office building near the NRG Stadium. That's in the article because that's where the Houston Texans play football, just to throw that in. Doesn't matter to the story. And it's not at the stadium, it's an office building nearby. But anyway, it was in the story, big deal. A man with apparently had mental health issue was killed after witnesses say he became violent. No one else was injured. The incident started on the 5th floor of the Community Health Choice Building, 2636 South Loop, if you're from Houston. The individual had an appointment with a counselor at a center for people with mental disabilities. The staff decided to reschedule because he said he wasn't feeling well. The man left and came back within a half an hour and had a mental episode, according to the police. Yelling, making demands, kicking at doors. He kicked in a glass door, totally damaged it, said an HPD detective. Probably a frightening situation for many people. The staff there, mostly women, felt threatened, so they locked their doors. That's when the man went next door to a tax consulting business. This is all on the upper floors. And came in. The owner of the business was aware of the ruckus. He had a gun, fired one shot at the man, and killed him. The shooter's attorney said the victim lunged at his client, and his client, the accountant guy, felt threatened. A sign is posted on the front door saying "Open carry is allowed." The shooter had a license to carry. That's the accountant, according to police. So far, no charges have been filed. The dead man's name has not been released. Police say it didn't appear that he was armed. There's a lot of stuff here. This is now the guy's involved, the accountant who actually fired the shot. It's an atrium where there's glass doors, and he was aware of what was going on. All these women were fighting and locking themselves in their doors, etc. They knew the guy was crazy. Apparently, the accountant, being next door, knows most of their clients or have mental issues. Apparently, a shooting of an unarmed opponent that appears to be reasonable given what the accountant had witnessed. I'll say one thing very much in the accountant's favor is it said in the story the shooter's attorney said the victim lunged at his client and he felt threatened. He didn't make a statement to the police. Probably didn't take a picture of the dead guy.
This is a close case,
yeah,
and it all depends on how well the shooter can articulate the circumstances of the threat. For example, you mentioned a couple of issues. If he knows his business is housed next to a mental health facility where violent people or people can get violent if there have been issues in the past, if he can articulate that people experiencing mental health episodes can demonstrate extraordinary strength or other sorts of failure to respond to pain and things like that, what the person was saying, if the person was saying some pretty heinous things like "I'm going to rip your ears off and pull your eyes out," or things of that nature, coupled with the physical threat. I mean, this is where an attorney really, that pause between the actual shot and the statement date and time is necessary and isn't going to hurt your case.
No, this is a great example of this accountant. Armed accountants scare me, but and if my accountant Greg is watching this, yes, this can wobble either way.
Yes.
And you can look at the guy's
very well
family
get
going,
charged.
he went there to get help and they shot him, and he didn't even have a gun, and blah 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 blah, and that's true. They did shoot him and he didn't have a gun, and but we're on the 7th floor or something. I would assume the accountant doesn't have a back door he can run out of.
He might.
At least
not.
a
Who knows?
really tall step. But he's defending the other women, and the guy had already broken a glass door and this and the other thing.
Defense of another is a whole other issue.
Yeah, it's they weren't in danger when he fired. So
it's all twisting on how the facts are articulated and how those facts are corroborated by other witnesses.
You need a lawyer when you're in a shooting. This guy's obviously a professional, and the first thing he did was get his attorney to make the statement and didn't talk to the cops, which is a great idea. Some other news on political fronts. Guns.com reported this week Missouri is about to become the 11th state to allow constitutional carry. The legislation is on the way to Governor Jay Nixon's desk. The House final vote was 114 to 36, and the Senate's vote was 24-8, which is a veto-proof thing. If the governor doesn't sign it, it passes anyway. It didn't actually change their law. It added something to their law. You can still get a concealed carry permit in Missouri and apply for one and go through training and so forth. But it also says the new law will allow law-abiding citizens who are legally allowed to own and carry a firearm for self-defense to do so without first obtaining such a license or completing training. So you can still get a permit in Missouri if you want for carrying to other states, obviously. And interesting, it was in the article, and I was not aware of this, legislation also locks in the permit fees at current rates, which is nice. And depending on how much money you want to give the police department, you can get a 10-year or 20-year or 50-year option on your permit, so you don't have to get one. Yeah, they're issuing them their lifetime permits in Arizona now, if you want one. They screen them every year, every 2 years or 3 years to see if the guy has not got a criminal record. Why should you have to go back and reapply?
Well, the law,
every so many years.
Once a person becomes a quote-unquote prohibited person, that person becomes liable under the federal and state firearms laws of almost all states.
So tell somebody.
Yeah, he either needs to stop possessing firearms if he becomes a prohibited person, which is not just because he gets a felony record, but there's other reasons.
There's other reasons. Yes.
But I mean, look, Bob, I me, I think if you're going to let people legally carry a firearm, concealed or otherwise, you still need to require that they have some training. I just don't like. I agree on this half of me. The other half says the Constitution says. Yes, there are. Yes, but the Constitution doesn't make illegal stupid people either. So,
yes,
and training can't hurt, and it certainly makes a person look better to a jury should they have a problem.
Yes, or it shows the jury they were told not to do that, and they did it anyway, which then it doesn't help a person. It's every firearms instructor I know is of the same mind I am, that are instructors that really instruct hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. Not the guy who teaches one class on a weekend to his cousin, but the instructors do it professionally. you always have somebody in your class, 1 out of 100 or 2 out of 100,
Mhm.
that the guy just doesn't get it, that you
No.
can't shoot anybody you want to.
Yeah.
And that's the guy that needs training. And when that's what I go through when I'm with Bill. People should have training. And the other half of me says constitutional right to defend yourself.
Well, I think there are two
So-
issues. There are two issues. And of course, the constitutional right to defend yourself or possess firearms has recently been affirmed by the United States Supreme Court. However, with reasonable restrictions or regulations to govern that right to bear arms. And I think a reasonable regulation should be at least some level of training.
At least 4 hours of listening to somebody saying, don't shoot people unless they do this, it's pretty straightforward. And we cover the high points very quickly.
Yes.
And give them a little written test so they know we know they understood it. And I've had,
You have to take a driving test, Bob. I mean, come on, to get a driver's license. I mean, why is this so, why is
I
this
remember years ago, I had a class of 20 or 25 people. And when we gave out the test at the end, I'm passing them out. And the guy that I handed the test to looked at it and said, no habla inglés. This was 7 hours into the conversation of the instruction.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, we'll argue that somewhere on a big panel one day. Second Amendment Foundation in Seattle reported a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a favorable ruling 2-1 that voided a Alameda County ordinance that would prohibit retail locations within 500 feet of a residential zone. They ruled 2-1 the ordinance must be subjected to heightened scrutiny, and I don't know, we need to explain that to the audience, but because it pertains to a constitutional right to keep and bear arms. What the dealers were saying when this ordinance came down was, we're not allowed to sell guns in an area where you're allowed to possess them. You can't make a law that says you can't possess a gun within 500 feet of a residence.
Correct.
So, but
Why can't you
telling
sell
I
them?
can't make a living,
Yeah.
doing that.
Heightened
And
scrutiny.
it would close virtually. Alameda, California County is Oakland.
Yeah.
And where can you be where you're not within 500 feet of somebody's residence? It's like,
This is true.
so anyway, the Ninth Circuit, a panel 2-1 kicked it, a victory for gun rights. They'll rewrite it and throw it back up somewhere, I'm sure. Speaking of California, I just got to read this list to you. If you're from California, you've got a lieutenant governor there who is going to be your next governor, who is pushing gun laws. A lot of them have been passed. A lot of them have been declined by the current Governor Moonbeam. This week, they introduced a whole pile of anti-gun bills, Assembly bills and Senate bills. I won't bother to read the numbers, but one requires a background check for ammunition purchases and creates a DOJ database for ammunition buyers. This is in California Department of Justice. You won't be able to buy ammunition unless you own legally a gun in that caliber. And you get a background check from the state. It's like we do for guns here, but for ammunition, unless you have a firearms ammunition purchaser's card, which is supposedly going to be $50 a year to have that card and put you in their database so you can buy ammo for guns you own. A couple more of them require serial numbers on all unserialized firearms retroactively and in the future. So
if you've got some sort of 1700s, cap and ball thing that's
or a
passed,
22 rifle built before 1953.
okay, you have to
has
have
no
it
serial
stamped.
number.
You have to have it stamped by somebody.
Well, you have to put the serial number and record it with the state. Bans firearms that have magazine locking devices like bullet buttons. You can't have bullet buttons anymore is one of the bills. So the magazines then have to be fixed in the gun. You load the gun from the top. You Californians will know what you're doing with that. It criminalizes loaning firearms between law-abiding adults. If you're out hunting, then you loan Bill your rifle.
Mhm.
It's a crime. because you need to do a background check for all
What's the rational?
transfers.
What's the legitimate governmental interest in that?
Another one, SB 894 criminalizes the failure to report lost or stolen firearms in a timely manner. If you don't report it within 48 hours of discovery,
It's 48 hours?
Crime. Report it within 48 hours of discovery. And there's some nebulous wording there about a timely manner. Those of you that have a gun under your mattress that you haven't looked at in the last 2 years, I hate to tell you this, it was stolen 18 months ago. And if you're in California, you haven't reported it yet, it's actually a crime. So you got to look every couple of days. I don't know what the wording's going to be. This is all going to committees. So
these haven't been passed?
No, haven't been passed.
Okay.
One of them provides taxpayer funding for gun control research at the University of California, Berkeley, I believe. The other one bans possession of magazines that can hold over 10 rounds. That ungrandfathers the existing grandfathered magazines that holds more than 10. So you will have instantly 400,000 or 500,000 felons in California. You'll have a certain number of days when this passes. The last time this was up, the governor vetoed it. This time, the new governor, who's the lieutenant governor now, he's the author of the bill. He will no doubt pass it. And so you will have a certain number of days to either turn your magazines into the police or remove them out of state by bringing them up and selling them to the gun store for $1 a piece, which is what I would suggest. There's a blog out there called the firearmspolicycoalition.org, firearmspolicycoalition.org, FPC.org. Sign up on the website. They're a great source for these laws. They file them all the time and tell you which senator to call and whatever and drown in letters, so forth. Terrorist attacks are happening. I mention this every show. Apparently not in the White House's opinion, but surprise, we apparently had a downing of an airliner in Egypt that they believe was another terrorist act. One more vote against Hillary. How many people have to get killed to not get her in office? Anyway, again, we have concealed carry firearm permit classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. This was a quick story. I'm going to save that one and do the ending first because we're about 7 minutes away. Upcoming events, we got the Las Vegas Gun Show, July 16 and 17 at the Sports Center up the road from us. We also have an upcoming show at Cashman, Crossroads of the West. If you would like a pass to the Crossroads of the West Gun Show coming up at Cashman, they sent me a bunch of them. I didn't write the date on my outline. It's a couple of weeks, I think, now. If you will drop me a line at that bob@firedupmail.com, I will send you a pass for the Cashman show, free to get in. It's $10 or $12 to get in. The reason they give those away is to get more people to come to the show. So if you call and you send me a note and say, please send me 4, I really can't do that. I can send you 1. That's the deal. So if you want to bring your cousin with you, he has to pay. That's the idea, is to get people to the show who weren't going to the show anyway. So, you know, they're in business to make a living too, guys. So bob@firedupmail.com. Give me your mailing address or give me a phone number, and we'll have a pass waiting for you here at our cashier when you come by. And it's absolutely free to get in. Again, next week we've got murder defense attorney Clark Patrick coming on.
He's a good lawyer.
A fine lawyer. Hopefully, all Clark works are capital cases. You know,
special public defender. He's
they're
deep in the thick of it.
They can't tell anybody where he works.
Sorry,
because that's a secret. See?
Oh, sorry.
That's why you can't hire him.
It's a damn good lawyer.
He's a government defense lawyer, and he is a fine lawyer, really versed in firearms also, and hopefully you don't meet him in a professional manner. Clark and I have done a couple cases together, and we're about to do another one, it looks like, on somebody. We are on KSHP Radio 1400 AM, as you know, and we're on YouTube, Fired Up with Bob Irwin. And questions and comments are going to go to bob@firedupmail.com. Please friend us on Facebook. They're carrying my stuff now on ammoland.com, which is a great gun information website. That the cases we're doing, I usually post them there also with more realistic comments that I can't really say on YouTube.
Or more inflammatory comments? Is that what you mean?
More inflammatory. That's
Okay.
the word I'm looking for. You know,
First Amendment friendly.
this is a story that just, there's not much to it, but there's a hitch in this giddy up here. This is ArizonaCentral.com reported an employee of a Phoenix, Arizona taco shop told police he fired a shot at a man who robbed a restaurant on Tuesday night. Police say the man who was shot has since died. The 35-year-old suspect was taken to the hospital after being shot outside of Taco Mish near 27th and Camelback. According to a Phoenix police spokesman, the employee admitted to shooting the individual after he allegedly committed an armed robbery of the business. The shooter was questioned by police and later released. That being said, the police are continuing to investigate the incident. Police believe there were more witnesses than they know of, so please contact the Phoenix Violent Crimes Bureau, and there's a number. You can, if you're there, you can find the Phoenix Violent Crimes Bureau, I'm sure. It sounds like a wonderful shooting, except one word. The robber was shot outside of the Taco Mish. He had already robbed the place and was out the door. Probably not good. Depending on which community activists get involved, and you know, here we shot a guy who was running away. This is Phoenix. It's not precisely like some of the cases I've reiterated in a certain state like Texas that I won't mention because it gets me in trouble. I got to
There are certain
lunch for mentioning Texas.
There are certain ways this is a good shoot. I mean, he could have shot him inside the premises.
And the guy just
and he
stayed.
bled out.
Yeah.
He bled out and he fell or something like that. Or if the person is still possessing or brandishing a firearm, even if they're moving away, and demonstrated a threat. As a citizen,
Someone else.
you can act as a citizen to effect an arrest under those circumstances and use some force, under reasonable force under the circumstances. Just depends on the facts.
And the closer the cases are, the more lawyers you get to pay
Yes.
for the longer period of time.
I would,
staying out of jail.
if this person was fleeing, my advice to that person would be don't pull the trigger, follow, stay behind cover, and call the cops.
Yeah. The cops have free lawyers and different rules
And
for
body
engaging
armor.
bad guys, and that we don't have as civilians. It's this is just something I hate to see, because when this type of thing happens, and I read the story and I went, oh God, a great shooting, and there's one little word, being shot outside of the Taco Mish. You know, that may be just the way the press reported it. The guy
Could be,
might have
yeah.
been shot inside and staggered out. That's a more common thing, actually,
Mhm.
because people do move after you shoot them, and that's part of the problem with not explaining everything to police. If the body's outside and you're inside, don't try to explain to them how the guy got there. The crime lab will figure that out by where the blood spatters are. You know, dummy up, call Bill Gamish. Go, help Bill, help Bill. That is all the time we have. I think we are about to run aground here on, as I said, we've got Clark Patrick coming next week, who none of you know where he works. And
Apparently I stepped in it. I apologize.
now that some of you are beginning to find us here on Thursday, I appreciate that. Our listener base, we just disappeared from the air, and so if you have a friend who listens to this, please advise them we're on Thursday. We put it on all our advertising, but it's not in the middle of the Dodger game that says, by the way, if you're listening to this,
Yes.
Bob's over on Thursday. Come on over. Anyway, we appreciate that. Have a great evening, Bill. Thank you once again. Fine job.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Good seeing you.